We are here with Cindy and Rich Kern from Cardinal Farms to see how they are transforming their pole barn into a fruit and vegetable wash pack facility. In this video, Cindy and Rich get some advice from Phil Tocco, an on-farm food safety educator with Michigan State University Extension, on how to keep produce safety in mind when building their new wash pack.
So what would you recommend for our product flow in the wash pack? We really want it to be efficient and make sense with the layout of the farm and the garden.
So the goal is to create an easy flow where the clean product doesn't pass through the path of the dirty product. You really want to create an open pattern. If your production's on the west side, it makes sense to use the west door as your entry point. In your mind, create a diagonal line separating the clean and the dirty produce. What equipment will be used in the wash pack?
Right now, we know that we do a lot of greens. That tends to be one of our big sellers at the farmer's market. So we definitely need to have a bubbler or two bubblers and then a spinner. Right now, we're using a hand spinner, and long term, we need something more automatic to spin the greens, and then a drying table for the greens as well. We need storage both for the cooler and the freezer, but also for like squashes and tomatoes and things that don't need to be cooled per se, but need to be kept at room temperature and also safe from rodents.
So it makes sense to keep your cooler and your freezer over in that northeast part of the shed. That would be like the clean side. Something to consider is to really think about building a vestibule so that it allows for the storing of produce around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which then you basically have the cooler set at, say, 32. It'll leak a certain amount of cool air into that vestibule area. And so your vestibule area would be like the warm weather storage crops, things like tomatoes and eggplant. And then you have the cooler weather stuff, or the stuff that needs to be stored at 32, stored in that cooler. And then you'd have even a freezer. So if you have the freezer entrance be inside the cooler, then you could have basically anything that escapes from the freezer in terms of cold air can be captured inside the cooler. From a sustainability standpoint, that allows for a really solid ability to maximize your use of energy throughout the entire system.
Where would you recommend we put the hand washing station?
Your goal with hand washing is to make it absolutely impossible to have someone come into the pack house without literally tripping over, stumbling over the hand wash station. So making it as prominent as possible right by the man door makes a lot of sense.
One of our concerns, of course, is all the water that's going to run off from washing the produce. So what are your recommendations as far as drainage goes?
Yep. I would think about a trench drain that runs down the middle. I would also include a drain in the cooler so that at least once a year you can go in there when all the crop is out of there and clean out the cooler, like hose down the cooler, spray sanitizer on the walls and the floor and let it set so that you can have a full-on clean cooler to start with at the beginning of every season.
In regards to equipment, there's quite a range of products that we could buy. So what would be some of your recommendations?
So if you can get yourself some high density plastic like Lexan or Delran, those are good choices. They can get a little expensive. Another thought to think about is something like Formica that's seamless, that's impervious, that's non-porous. That cleans up really well too. So don't think that you're limited to like, I need stainless steel. Stainless steel is nice, but it's not always the best. It certainly isn't cost effective. Definitely there's lots of other things you can use.
Would you have any suggestions for the types of products we would use for our cut flowers, since we're doing produce and cut flowers? For instance, can we store those together in the same cooler? Is there anything you'd suggest in that regard?
So the challenge with that is really mixing something that is a covered crop with something that's not covered. So by covered, I'm talking about it's covered under the produce safety rule. You have to worry about cross contamination. So if your farm is covered under the rule, and then you have to consider whether or not the crops that you're handling are covered under the produce safety rule, and keeping those separate. That means separate buckets. That means separate direct food contact surfaces. To mitigate the risk associated with mixing those two things, you always want to start with your produce in the morning and get all of your produce work done first, and then move to those things that are not covered under the produce safety rule. Then clean and sanitize everything so that you can start back up with the covered produce the next day. And what do you plan on with the floor? Is there any kind of special treatments you plan on with respect to the floor?
So we have just a solid dirt floor right now, and we are big believers in wheels and making things smooth and easy as possible, since we're both in the more mature category. So in order to make this efficient and easy on our bodies, we really want to invest in a concrete floor with proper drainage.
Whatever you do, it should definitely slope up against the wall, because those little cracks are where listeria will go to hide and breed. And then however you seal it's going to make the difference. If you seal concrete, then your sanitizers that you use aren't going to hurt the concrete. Certain sanitizers, if you've got raw concrete that hasn't really been sealed, they'll eat away at the concrete floors. As with anything, you definitely want to be incredibly vigilant against water collection points. So especially at the time that you are pouring the concrete and getting it shaped, make certain that you're using every opportunity that you have. I would use a laser level even to get a nice gentle slope on that floor so that there's no place for the water to collect.
This has been incredibly helpful. Is there anything else that we haven't asked that you would recommend for us as we're considering the build out of our wash pack?
So definitely think about clipboards, where to keep clipboards and record keeping so it's easy to access. If you have a place where cleaning supplies are stored, where cleaning is done, you want to have the records for where cleaning is done at the site of cleaning. So that way, when folks are cleaning, they can easily keep the records right there. Or making it hard for someone not to keep a record is the key. You want to really not just encourage the right behavior, but you want to discourage the wrong behavior. Having that stuff so it becomes a visual cue, so it is difficult to avoid doing, is the key. So with respect to record keeping, having your pens close, one of the things that we try and think about is having a pen tied to a clipboard that has the record in it so that the pen is right there. Because if I've got to walk to the next building, or I have to walk out to the car to grab something to write down what I'm doing, or write down that I did something, any little something is going to stop me from doing the right thing. So keep it easy.